Now, I can hear it, I can hear it, I can hear it. Okay, Mr. Lozano, what are you talking about? Everybody's already said this 1,000 times. How about on your table, there are these sign-up forms, and I don't know how many of you were here earlier. How about if every young person here was to sign up and engage in those conversations with Search and others that are going to commence in January? How about if your voice became so public, so activated, so engaged that nobody could even resist not having you on the next conference call because of your comments, your insights, your rational understanding of what's going on in a community? How about if there was the potential of connecting mentors and people on the ground floor in your backyards? How about if there were people who would actually come around the agencies and the nonprofit corporations and the schools that you exist in and try to figure out how to develop that spark to a flame where it's igniting on all kinds of people? And you may say, Mr. Lozano, do you know what you're talking about? Have you ever done that before? I took a vacation. When I left the California Department of Mental Health Services, I was a drug abuse counselor. I was helping all kinds of folks in a triage unit. I was doing all the hard cases, the gang members, and all these folks that they sent into me. I had what they called an illegal caseload because the folks working with me didn't want to leave. And my caseload went 50% over legal. I didn't know what to do with them. There was not another counselor in that unit. I had to take care of these folks, and I was having a blast. But I decided at that point in juncture, after all of these years, at that point in time, it was 13 years on the treatment side of the world, that I was on the wrong side of the lake. That if I didn't get in front of this system, that my own two boys in school at that time, high school, how did Dad have a guarantee as a mental health counselor that my own two sons weren't going to find themselves in some kind of complicated situation? Dad couldn't protect them when they went to school. Dad couldn't follow them and see who their friends were. Dad could only engage with them. So I decided to engage my boys and myself in creating the Western States Youth to Youth Alliance. Anybody ever heard of Youth to Youth? Youth to Youth is just this movement, this ground floor community development with young people and adults spending an entire year dreaming up dreams, creating conferences, engaging in all the asset development stuff. We didn't know it was called that back then in the early 80s. It was almost at the beginning of resiliency. We didn't even know what social development strategy was yet. And we had no idea about assets. But we knew one thing: if dads and moms and young people worked together in the communities, we could transform things. I started doing that in 1987 in this little community in California called Solvang in Santa Barbara County. And by 1990, we were recognized by President Bush as one of the top 10 coalitions in the United States of America. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of collegiate students, hundreds and hundreds of high school students that literally traveled with me all over the Western states, engaging communities in development. I know how that works. The most beautiful part of this story is my two boys traveled everywhere with me. When we ended up in Washington, D.C. to give that speech that I was going to keynote on behalf of the president in 1990, and they wanted me to talk on the topic of drug-free youth, I looked at myself, and I just looked at the monitor, and I said this. They wanted me to submit a whole speech, and I did. But I changed that process. So at the very end of my production, I had a whole panel that I was going to engage in. I got up behind the mic, talked for 5 minutes, introduced the panel, got out of the way. My own sons, their fellow students from all over the nation that we'd been working with, delivered a full-blown Donahue show to 2,000 guests in behalf of the President of the United States. They rocked. They did their business. Because they were the only answer in that room that I've been championing. And to bring this to a close, the gifts in Indian country is that each one of you are called presents. Presents from a creator. Presents from a family line and a tradition. Presents from some place to do something on this earth. And that question about who are you and why are you and where am I going is a relevant question in this day. And we the leaders in this nation, trying to engage this dialogue about your posture, your position, the federal understanding of what this whole movement is all about has to come with us combining our resources, energy, technologies, and organizations together in some fashion, some way that we can leverage enough people, creating enough viable, sustainable community engagements that we can move and address to where we actually cause people at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level to look at us and go, how are these folks changing all of this? Why is this program working? Why are schools developing and growing at your level? And when they come to find that true secret, the end of this afternoon presentation, every adult in that room will say, don't come to me for the answer. You go talk to those young people who've delivered the goods, who've brought their peers in, who've transformed this community, who've talked to the mayor's office, who went to the boards of supervisors, who went to the governor's office, who visited their Senate and House members. You talk to those folks because they're the present. This is the present. Come on, give us some final words, brother. Yeah.
So, you have heard the present and the past. But that's good.
That's right.
It's our turn.
That's right.
It's time for us to take charge.
That's right.
It's time for us to step to the plate. It's time for us to take over not Houston, not Omaha, not Minnesota, not New York, but the United States of America.
Yahoo!
It's time for us youth, teenagers to step up to the plate. But we can't do it successfully without having a back catcher, which is our adults.
Right. Good man, Tristan.
So we need those relationships. We need those communities. We don't care who's doing it. We don't care who takes credit for it. We just need it. And we have a need. And as parents, as teachers, as professors, as mentors, as trainees, it's your job to make sure we have what we need. And that's what we need. And youth, we need to move forward as one. But we need to have this bond with those past generations because history repeats itself. And I promise you, this is a product right here. We promise you what happened in the past will eventually happen again in the present. And if we have no knowledge of what happened in the past, how can we move further? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.